we want to make sure that obvious cases of discrimination can still be addressed appropriately. And in cases where something is not obvious, we want to apply logic and common sense to it. Otherwise, everything could become a disparate impact case.
No, but the burden proof would be so much. I mean, the complete intention is to show that the impact of the act or the structure that's in place that's discriminatory against the families.
Wow. Just wow. You guys, I have seen some attempted takedowns in Congress before, but what Rashida Tlaib just tried to pull on Dr. Ben Carson, it is absolutely embarrassing. She walked in there thinking she was going to lecture a literal brain surgeon on common sense, and instead, she got a masterclass in logic. If you want to see what happens when the squad's emotional talking points collide with actual reality, stick around. You do not want to miss this breakdown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An investigation in Metro Detroit found that about 40% of people in protected classes experience unlawful differences in treatment by housing providers. This unlawful discrimination is usually hidden. It's not like we're going to find signs that are posted on doors of homes that say no, don't rent to Black families, or no Muslim families, or no LGBTQ families allowed. And so, yes or no, Secretary Carson, do you believe that landlords or property owners or housing providers anywhere in the United States have ever engaged in discriminatory practices against protected groups?
Of course they have, and we strongly oppose that.
Yes or no, Secretary Carson, do you believe that there should be some level of protection to prevent or stop discrimination that is rarely explicit nowadays?
Of course there should be.
So, Secretary Carson, under your leadership, HUD proposed a rule to make substantial changes to disparate impact standards under the Fair Housing Act. The rule would make it harder for families facing housing discrimination to seek justice by shifting the burden of proof onto them. Can you explain why the agency charged with enforcing the Fair Housing Act is proposing to make it more difficult for plaintiffs to bring forward housing discrimination claims under the disparate impact standard?
I can probably explain it best by giving you an example. If Congress decided that they wanted to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, the people who would be most impacted would be low-skilled individuals. And a lot of those low-skilled individuals would be in the minority classes, and therefore they could bring a disparate impact suit. We want to make sure that obvious cases of discrimination can still be addressed appropriately. And in cases where something is not obvious, we want to apply logic and common sense to it. Otherwise, everything could become a disparate impact case.
No, but the burden proof would be so much. I mean, the complete intention is to show that the impact of the act or the structure that's in place that's discriminatory against the families. Like the disparate impact helps with going after those that are going to hide that discrimination. Again, Secretary Carson, it's not like they're putting signs up anymore. It's not like we're going to find emails. I mean, sometimes we do. But disparate impact allows people access to that justice to show housing discrimination. So the example, I'm disagreeing with your example in that you're showing that it's because most of the claims that are coming forward are, we still have a huge burden to show that kind of disparate impact. It's not as easy as it claims. I've had a number of clients and residents that come forward, and we've lost more Black home ownership in Michigan than any other state. We've seen actual shifting of home ownership away from communities that are struggling, and we do believe it stemmed around a lot of housing discrimination, and there should be equal access to bring those claims forward. So I just strongly disagree with kind of the analysis that you bring forward, and really advise your department to push back against getting rid of disparate impact. I mean, almost making it impossible, Secretary Carson, impossible to bring a housing discrimination claim. But Director Calabria, we know that a quarter of the mortgages provided by government-sponsored enterprises must be allocated to low-income borrowers, as I know has been discussed. The Treasury Department claimed that in order to protect taxpayers and making housing more affordable, federal housing financing authorities should bring in private lenders to foster competition in the financial system. Anytime, Director, fostering competition is being brought up or used, it results in enterprises getting richer at the expense of ordinary people. Director Calabria, will you these private lenders also have an obligation to make a quarter of the mortgages they back to low-income borrowers.
So all of the private lenders who originate mortgages and therefore sell them to GSEs are indirectly impacted by the housing goals because the loans that are bought have to meet the housing goals. So again, let's say you're a lender who sold 100% of your loans to Fannie or Freddie, you would on average be meeting those housing goals. So again, indirectly it impacts the originators and servicers who deal with Fannie and Freddie.
And so what my residents would ask you is about accountability. How do we make sure? So how can we make sure that these private market participants are beholden to the American home buyers rather than shareholder profits?
I think that's a great question. We hold the counterparty, so I have no ability to regulate the counterparties to Fannie and Freddie. I regulate directly Fannie and Freddie. And so our accountability is making sure that when Fannie and Freddie meet those goals, they can only meet those goals by having the entities that they buy from essentially on our.
Part 2. Main body reaction. Host settles in, leaning forward, more conversational but fired up. Host. Okay, so we just watched the whole exchange. Let's take a deep breath, because there is so much nonsense to unpack here. First off, let's talk about the vibe. You have Rashida Tlaib, a charter member of the squad, coming in with that trademark aggression. We see this all the time from her and AOC. They don't want answers, they want sound bites. They want a lecture. She starts off immediately trying to paint the HUD administration as these villains who want to let landlords discriminate. It's the classic playbook. If you don't agree with my specific government regulation, you must hate. Insert group here. But then you have Dr. Ben Carson. The man is the definition of grace under pressure. He's sitting there, calm, collected, soft-spoken, basically the adult in the room. Tlaib is grilling him on this disparate impact rule. Basically, she's mad that HUD wants to make it harder to sue people for discrimination without actual proof of intent. She thinks that if a policy happens to affect one group more than another, it's automatically racism, even if there's no racist intent. And this is where Carson absolutely dismantles her argument with one simple analogy. Did you catch it? He brings up the $15 minimum wage. He says, look, if you raise the minimum wage, the people who lose their jobs first are low-skilled workers, who are often minorities. So by Tlaib's own logic, raising the minimum wage could be sued as racist because it has a disparate impact on minorities. It is a brilliant point. He's showing her that you need logic and common sense. Otherwise, everything becomes a lawsuit. You can't just look at the outcome. You have to look at the policy itself. And how does Tlaib react to this logic? Does she engage with it? No, she panics. She interrupts him. She literally says, I disagree with your example. Well, of course you do, Rashida, because it proves that your worldview is flawed. She starts rambling about how it's not like they put signs on the door anymore. Yeah, we know that, Congresswoman. Carson knows that. He grew up in poverty in Detroit and Boston. He knows what discrimination looks like better than she ever will. But he also knows that you can't build a legal system based on feelings and assumptions. You need proof. She keeps trying to lecture him about justice and accountability, but she's the one missing the point. She wants a system where the government can hammer private businesses and lenders based on statistics alone, regardless of fairness. Carson is trying to protect the system from becoming a free-for-all for trial lawyers. Honestly, watching this was painful for her. She tried to entrap him, and he just sidestepped it with basic economic literacy. It really highlights the difference between a career politician looking for clicks and a serious intellectual trying to solve problems. The squad loves to talk a big game, but when they go toe-to-toe with someone like Ben Carson who actually deals in facts and logic, they crumble. Every single time. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Tlaib actually understood Carson's point, or did it go right over her head? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more sanity checks like this.